It's not connected.
I know. Is anyone here for this? Is anyone here for this? If not, then I'll just
Or you can join this. There should be one more call, TP link 9459.
5G?
Yes. And the password is 666.
Everyone's gonna see it, I guess.
Oh, sorry. 666 590 20. Connected?
Sorry, guys. Wi-Fi's not working. Yeah, I can't view my slides. Huh? Oh, okay. Which one? Or how do I connect to this? How do I know? This one? LAN? I'm trying to send a message first. Disconnect this really quickly.
No, don't go on screen.
Sorry. Okay. Nice. It's not showing up though. Good. Hi. So I'm going to be giving a workshop today. Can people hear me? Is this good? Cool. I'm going to be giving a workshop today on building MPC applications. MPC stands for multi-party computation. I'll explain a very high level of how that works. And then this talk is going to introduce also this idea called digital pheromones, which I'll go into a lot more detail on, but essentially is this way of using multi-party computation for human connection, which is like a primary focus for us at Cursive and what we'll be also giving a hackathon bounty out about. So yeah, I want to first talk about this idea. So to introduce digital pheromones, first like multi-party computation. So the idea here is that essentially a number of parties, greater than 2, have some private data, and they're essentially trying to compute some sort of function over all of their private data, but only revealing the output of the computation. None of the intermediate results, none of the actual private data itself. And so this is a very simple thing, and maybe like an example of this is like some sort of matching thing between 2 people. Like if you want to see if you have, let's say, compatible like job matching or dating or other sort of things, you can run this as in a function where your inputs to this function are not revealed, but the output, like true or false, is revealed. And what are biological pheromones? So if you're not familiar, this is like this chemical substance that different animal species produce, and it's basically used as a way of coordinating between members of that same species. So there's like mostly like olfactory, but this sort of signaling is extremely useful, and we think basically like combining multi-party computation with like human-centric data can enable kind of a digital version of this. And so how I define digital pheromones is threefold. The first is it's a lightweight, privacy-preserving signal, and we can just put this out, and this can be used to essentially, generate connection and coordination between different people. Second is that this sort of thing is fully programmable and verifiable, and so, using multi-party computation techniques, you can compute any sort of query or function you want, and you can have inputs to this be like ZK proven. And finally, for this to almost be like an equivalent to biological pheromones, at least kind of on like a nature level, this ideally is happening on like a neutral peer-to-peer protocol. there's no specific server or specific like stack that this is tied to. It can just kind of exist like in a way that different peers can interpret this. And so how can we think this, how do we think this sort of thing could help with human connection? If you break human connection down into two problems of basically like discovering connection and then deepening it, we think it can help with both. So on discoverability, like right now, we're basically stuck with like AI algorithms, advertising markets, who, you know, show us content or show us different people that we should meet. And these apps and services are often completely unaligned with us in that what they're actually hoping to do is to make you spend as much money as possible and waste as much of your time. And like, they actually do not care about like finding genuine connection for you. In fact, a dating app would rather have you stay on the dating app forever and keep paying them versus actually have you leave. At least like monetarily, that's completely what they're incentivized to do. And so the sort of cryptographic part of this is that on one hand, like we can actually have full ownership of our own data using tools from like signatures and zero knowledge proofs. And as a result of this, like instead of that just going to an algorithm or to these advertising markets, we can control how it's used and interfaced with using tools like MPC. When it comes to depth of connection, like existing social medias and these sorts of platforms for connection, there's no verifiability on anything that happens. It's a common horror story of like dating apps of you meet somebody and they're like completely different from what they say they are, because ultimately like you just like say things right now online. There is no sort of like trust or verifiability on this stuff. And in a similar vein, like we operate on most of these in this like billboard model where we just like post things publicly about ourselves. Everyone can see everything. And as a result, we often, instead of tending to like be who we really are, we tend to show off like kind of sanitized versions of who we are and sort of cater to the algorithm. And so in a world with MPC and more cryptography, like first off, you can basically prove and sign off on all sorts of different information to essentially ensure that like, you know, we have verifiability on this stuff. And also because this information is private to you first, ideally you can actually share deeper personal information and actually, you know, facilitate like more meaningful connection this way. And again, like you can basically use these tools, like these multi-party computation tools I was talking about, to basically discover both common and also complementary traits in a way that doesn't need to be mediated through a central service. So I'm just going to go through like a bunch of different ideas for what this sort of thing can enable. I'll skip through a couple of them because we don't have that much time. But the first is the idea of narrowcasting. So this is kind of the opposite of broadcasting. Instead of just putting out information to everybody and hoping an algorithm gets to the right people, you can essentially privately attest to the criteria that you want, like the criteria of person that you want to share this information with. And so this is nice in two levels. One is that the information that you get is almost like guaranteed to basically match who you are and coming from like verified people. And also when you send out information, you can guarantee that it is getting to people who will, you know, it'll be most relevant to. And in this way, we can sort of have information dispersal in a way that's much more like aligned with what we want instead of an algorithm or some sort of advertising market. This is a kind of mathy thing. Another kind of like business angle here is that a lot of this technology enables basically more peer-to-peer connections between businesses and consumers. In particular, like a lot of what I'm describing right now actually is basically just done by Facebook and Google for us. They collect all of our data and they essentially serve as this middleman that connects businesses to consumers by saying, oh, this business wants X person, this person has, you know, these characteristics, and then they just collect rent on this connection making. And, you know, it leads to, you know, goods being priced higher. It leads to, again, like, you know, these things not being incentive aligned with what you want.